Okay, so let's continue on with putting this mural on the wall. I've just opened my project. I've got Shot 2 version 1, and when I'm done here, I'm going to save this as a version 2 just to kind of save in my increments if I need to go back. And you can see by just opening the file, our window painting is gone, where we painted out the window, and this line's visible again. So I'm going to hit Shift E down here to get rid of that line again, to hide it. And to make our paint visible, I will disable it and re-enable it. I don't know if that's a bug or not. I think it is. Must be, right? If I just select that node and disable it and then re-enable it by hitting D, it kind of comes back, and that's fine. That'll be great. So I'm going to hit F. And now we are ready to continue on with our work. I'm going to bring in the mural. And here I've got it. It's called Mural Flat 2 PNG. And I'm just going to drag it over here and drop it in. And by pressing 1 with it selected, we will now see the mural. So it looks a little funky right now, but there is a nice alpha channel. If we look at the alpha channel by hitting A, you can see there is a really nice one. It's got a lot of transparency in it, so you can kind of see the wall through it. Why are we not seeing that here? Well, we need to pre-multiply this image, and that means we're going to multiply the RGB channels with the built-in alpha channel. We're going to just multiply them together, literally. So anywhere that a pixel is, say, 0.5 in the alpha channel, the RGB channels are then going to be half opacity. You can kind of half see through them, half opaque. So and that's kind of typically the way you work with images with alpha channels. A lot of times you'll bring them in and they'll be unpremultiplied. So if you just hit tab and start typing premult, you'll see it right there, premult. Add that and you'll see it instantly becomes exactly what we want. If we turn on our grid behind the image, you can see we're seeing through it exactly as we want to. So yeah, that's pre-mult and unpremult can be a little bit tricky. Excuse me. If we were going to do a color correction, for example, what you would want to do is do the color correction. You would want to unpremult, then do the color correction, and then premult. Because if you do a color correction on a pre-multiplied image, that color correction is only going to be applied to those semi-transparent edges at a not 100% value. It's going to because just the fact that those edges are transparent and they've got a transparent alpha and all that, it's just going to do some weird things with the math. So by unpremultiplying, you're bringing all the alpha channel values that are not 0 up to 1. You're doing your color correction, so you're hitting all the pixels correctly as far as your color correction, and then you're pre-multiplying back with the alpha channel, which will give you nice perfect edges. So that's just something to keep in mind. But for now, just know that throwing this pre-multiply on will make it look very nice. So let's go ahead and throw another merge node here. I'm selecting that one, and then I'm hitting M here, and I'm going to drag the A up to our pre-mult. And by selecting this one and hitting 1, we can see that our image is all wrong, right? All wrong. Okay, so the first things we're going to do is we're going to make it move with the footage. So we're just going to, we know that our corner pin already has that wall motion in it. So we're just going to clone it. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can right click on it and go ahead up to edit, and well, we want to duplicate, not clone. We're going to duplicate. So you can just click that, and did it make it? Where'd it go? All right, it didn't make it. Oh, there it is, all the way over there. Very strange. Okay, so I put it over there, but you see it did duplicate it. And if we do, if we Shift E to see our links to our track, you can see that that new one is linked as well. So you can Shift E and turn that off. And I'm going to hold down Control while I'm moving this around. And it's still not letting me put it in there. There we go. Okay. And drop that in. So now, as we look at our as we scroll through here a little bit, you will see that let's move it a lot, right? And our mural image, actually, it does move with the footage, which is exactly what we want. However, it is placed all wrong. So to place it, what we're going to do is we're going to use another corner pin. We're not going to use this one. This one has the motion of that wall. We don't want to touch that one. But what you could do is hit T. I'm going to select the pre-malt and hit T, and it'll drop this after it. And T is your transform, which lets you kind of move things around. It gives you this handy little widget. We can move things, and you can scale things right here by kind of, if I do this and I kind of scroll down, you can see we're scaling it down a bit. You can also do the slider a little. So you can see, you can get there with the transform, but the transform is not going to take into account this perspective of the wall. And I know it's subtle, and I know it's probably not really noticeable, but I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to delete that transform, select this pre-malt, tab, and I'm going to start to bring in another corner pin just by typing corner, and that first one there in the list, and hit enter, and it gives me another corner pin. And what this one's going to do is just put pins at the corners of our image, and now I can just simply drag these down where I need them. There we go. And I'm just kind of getting them in the ballpark right now. And then I'll zoom in a little bit. Excuse me. And let's see if we can do this a little better. Like that. And I'm going to get this one straight up and down, and this one straight up and down, but kind of moving with the wall, perspective of the wall. So you can see there's a subtle, there's a perspective in there now, like with her face, that I think really works nicely. That I don't think you get with the transform. All right, I'm going to bring this over a little bit. I want it to be right. I kind of want it overlapping the vines here a little bit. We're going to put it behind these vines. And I want it overlapping these this window and air conditioner a little tiny bit. Like this. Something like that maybe. That looks pretty good, I think. So there we go. So because we have this corner pin before our track corner pin, basically it's taking the image, it's positioning it, and then it's applying the motion. So it should stay tracked on very nicely through right here through the whole sequence, which it's looking like it's doing very nicely, right? It's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's looking really good. We can stop it. I don't even have to wait for the whole thing. Kind of go back here, and yeah, look at that. It's moving perfectly. It's exactly what we want. So let's continue on. We are next going to let's roto out what needs to happen here. We're going to roto away. You can see it's kind of overlapping the window here, and it's overlapping this air conditioner, and we kind of want to fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that after this corner pin. We're going to cut out, because we want it positioned correctly, and then we want to cut these out. And if we do that before the track, it will still be moving. Our cutouts will move right along with the rest of the track, so it'll be great. So we won't have to animate our rotoscopes. So I'm going to hit O to bring in a roto node. And I'm just going to start drawing. I'm going to click here, 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 here. And you see it's not perfect yet. What's it doing? Let's go. What are we doing here? It kind of locked up on me for a second. Oh, lordy. What are we doing? I have no idea what it's doing. There we go. Okay. I'm going to select them all, Control A and Shift Z, just to make sure that they're all real corners and not a really small Bezier handle by accident. And I'm just going to kind of reposition these a nice even distance from the I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge of a of a gap between. I'm not going to roto it right on it. I'm going to leave that gap there a little bit. And we can even name this one window. And let's name this roto while we're at it. Let's call it wall cutouts, because that's what we're doing, right? We're cutting things out of this wall, or out of the mural, I guess. So okay, I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to go down here and draw another one. I'm going to select my Draw Bezier tool again. And I'm going to do the same exact thing right here, like that. And Control A and Shift Z. And we can even lock the window since we're done with that one. I'm going to call this one AC unit because it's the air conditioning unit. And if you're having trouble seeing it, because it's kind of hard to see there, you can just select this merge node and hit D to disable it, and then come right back up here to your roto tool and start fixing that spline. That looks great, and let's turn that back on with a D, and we can go ahead and lock that as well. So now how do we apply this? We're going to do the same thing we did over here with this merge, where we've set it to mask to kind of only put the window patch where that roto is. And if we do the opposite of that, the opposite of mask is a stencil, it will cut out exactly where our roto is. So select this corner pin, hit M, or drop in a merge, connect the A to your roto, and it did exactly what it did before. Oh, that's interesting. Why is it shifted down? That's very interesting. Huh, what's going on there? That's very weird. Huh. Very strange. I don't know what happened there. Why that would be down there like that. Let's see here. I'm going to select all of those. Why is it not letting me select them all? There we go. And move those. What is it doing here? There we go. And lock that and unlock this one. Wonder what happened. I don't know why it decided to freak out on us a little bit right there, but it did for some reason. Lock that. So if yours does that, just make sure when you're adjusting it that you're back on the frame with the keyframe. Otherwise, you're gonna have two keyframes and it's gonna move on you. So just go ahead back to the frame wherever you adjusted it and readjust it. Now when we turn this back on, there we go. That's what we want to see. And in this merge node, we're going to set it to stencil, and it should just cut that out. There we go. And what else? We need to blur that edge a little bit. So let's go ahead and select that rotoscope and hit B for bring in a blur node and set it to maybe 14 or so. That looks good. And it seems a little far away now. So let's go ahead and make a little space between it and the blur node. And with that selected, we're going to bring in what's called an erode node. And it erodes and dilates, and it kind of, it'll let us move that rotoscope a little bit. So I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to start typing erode. You can see it's right there under filter. Hit enter, brings it in. And let's take a look at what that's doing actually. If I look at that actual alpha channel, and I'm going to turn this onto the slider, and I just kind of slide it, you can see by turning it up, it chokes it in, dilates it, and by moving it into the negatives, it makes it larger, expands it. And that's exactly what we want. So let's go ahead down here, let's look at our merge again, and look at the alpha, or I'm sorry, hit A just to go back to our RGB. And now we can kind of dial in this and let it update a little bit, and that's not what we want. We want maybe 4. That looks pretty good. Does that look all right? Looks all right. I'm going to turn the blur down a tiny bit. Let's bring this up and just go like 11 maybe. And then the erode, I'm going to go up to maybe 6. How about 5? 5. That looks good enough, I think. Yeah, that looks great. Good enough. So, and because that is all in front of our wall corner pin, we know that that will all move correctly. If we jump to another frame, we can see our roto sticks right with it, and we don't have to worry about anything. So only a couple other things left to do here. Let's blur it, first of all, right? If you zoom in here, you can see how sharp all this is and how kind of soft the plate is. So let's go ahead after our corner pin and hit B to blur it. And I'm going to turn that up to maybe 3. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Again, you can dial this in later if you want, but for now I'm going to leave it at 3. Another thing is it's a bit bright, right? It's very vivid. It's very it's just bright. Nothing else in this image is that bright. So I'm going to go ahead up here in front of the pre-mult. I'm going to make a little space, and with this image selected, I'm going to hit C to bring in my color correct node. I could also use a grade node, but right now the let me turn all these to sliders. The color correct has a saturation control, whereas the grade does not. No saturation, so there should actually be a saturation tool as well, which is only a saturation. But I want to do a little bit of gain or gamma and some saturation, so the color correct is what I want to use here. So let's go ahead and first let's turn down the gain to maybe like 0.6 just to make it a little dimmer. I think that looks pretty good. Let's try 0.5 just to be sure. I'm going to go back up to 0.6 for now. And then let's take some of that saturation away, like 0.7. Oh, that looks good, right? That looks pretty good. Let's try 0.6 just to see. Maybe it's too far. I actually like that. I think 0.6 looks, you know what? Let's leave it at 0.75. Let's try that and see what it looks like. 0.7. 0.68. Let's split the difference. S the D. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so next thing, well, we've got 2 more things to do. We've got to put it behind the vines and behind this bush, and then we can dial in the opacity a little bit and finalize it. So actually, let's put that back up to 7.2 maybe. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. First things first, let's hold out these. Get rid of where it's put it under these vines. So you could roto, right? The same way that we've removed stuff over here, you could create a rotoscope of all the little vines, but that's crazy talk. What else we can do is the whole point of rotoscoping is to create an alpha channel, right? We did that here. We did that here. We blurred them a little bit. This one we, eroded and blurred. The point is to make an alpha channel. So any way that you can make an alpha channel of those vines, you can do that. And you can use that to cut those vines out. So if we take a look at our footage again, and we look at the RGB channels, if we look at the alpha of it, right now it's still that window because our footage has no alpha. And then we're creating the alpha here and kind of pasting that over. So that's giving us, that's letting this alpha channel pass through here. However, if we could turn one of these color channels maybe into an alpha channel, that would be ideal. So let's take a look at our color channels. I'm going to take a look at red first. I'm going to hit R. And it looks pretty good on the vines. What we're looking for is contrast. Something that you can easily change it so it's black and white. And right now it looks like the vines could be really good as black and the wall could be white, but these trees kind of look very white as well. So I think if we turned this up until it was white, some of these points are brighter and a lot of the values are kind of the same. So this is going to go white as well. So let's take a look at the green channel, see if that's any better. All right, that's a little darker down here. This is still looking really good, as is this. And this is still kind of in the same ballpark, but it's better than the red. So let's take a look at the blue channel. Ah, there we go. That's what we want. That looks great. This is nice and dark. There's still some brighter things in here. But I think overall, I think it's definitely what we really kind of want. So we're going to use that blue channel as a matte. So go ahead back to your RGB channels. I'm going to make a little bit of space here. And the way we're going to shift that blue channel into becoming an alpha channel is with a shuffle node. The same thing that we used up here to create a solid matte by changing the alpha to 1. We're going to use that same node. So shuffle. And I'm going to plug the A right into this merge, the first merge node. And let's take a look at that. 1. And right now everything's still the same. It's letting everything pass through untouched, right? So we're plugging into the A socket. So the red channel coming out of it is the A red channel that's going in. Same with the green, blue, and the alpha. It's all the A socket RGB. But we want to switch the alpha channel to be the A input, the blue channel, so B. So pick that, and now let's hover up here and hit A, and there we go. Now our alpha channel is actually the blue channel, which is what we wanted. So now right after it, I'm going to put a grade node by hitting G, and I'm going to set these all to sliders because this is going to be very on the fly, not very precise. And we get a couple things we got to do here first before we do anything. If I start adjusting things, you'll see nothing happens, right? Oh, it sets that back. That's silly. Nothing happened when I adjusted that slider. Why was that? Well, if you look at these buttons up here at the top, these are what this grade node is going to affect. And right now, R, G, and B are checked, but alpha is not. So by sliding all these sliders, it's going to affect the RGB channels, but not the alpha. We want exactly the opposite. We only want it to affect the alpha. So go ahead and select alpha, and you can turn off RG and B, or you can leave them on. It really doesn't matter in this case. All we're really concerned about is the alpha. And then the other thing we want to do is right here, clamp white. Turn that on as well. And that way, we don't have to worry about any negative values or anything over 1. Negative values in an alpha channel will sometimes give you some weird results. So just make sure your white and black are both clamped to 1 and 0, which they just are by default if you just turn that on. So now we can go ahead and adjust these sliders and get this into a really nice white and black alpha channel. So I'm going to start with the white point. I'm going to start dragging it this way, and you'll see it's brightening everything up, especially that wall. And you can see it starts blowing out completely where we start losing detail, right? And that's exactly what we want. We want to get that wall right to the point where it's all blown out. And if I hover over it with the mouse, you can see down here, if you will look at the white number right here, you can see as I hover over here, that number is 1. So it's a perfect alpha channel, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to leave that there, 0.15. And then I'm going to start dragging the blacks. We have to get these vines and this plant down to 0 if we can. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this one the other way. And you can see really quickly it clips it all, which is really nice. So I'm going to go a little bit further like that. And I think that's probably a good start right there. I mean, we can dial it in later as necessary. So how do we apply this to our mural now? So I'm going to hit 1 on this merge and A so we can see it here. The way to apply this to the mural is through this mask input on the merge. You'll notice that a lot of nodes, the blur, the grade, the merges, what else? Anything else? Erode, rotos. A lot of these nodes have a mask input off to the right side. Sometimes you may have to hover over it to see it. I've changed mine in the preferences. You can change that somewhere. I'm not even sure where. Appearance, node graph. It's somewhere in here. Node graph. Auto hide masks input. I turned that off because I like to see them all the time. If we plug that into there, it's going to put whatever this is, it's going to put it over top, but it's going to respect whatever's plugged in here, whatever alpha channel is plugged in. So by plugging this in, we know that our wall is white and our vines are black. So by plugging this in, it's going to make our image disappear over the vines and stay there over the wall, which is exactly what we want. So now it's kind of behind those vines, but if you zoom in, you can kind of see it's it's kind of hard edged, and you know, like here you can kind of see it almost looks like there's like a line around it, like a little outline. Now that we're looking at it, we can go back into this grade node, and I'm going to select this value, and I'm just going to start tweaking it a little bit. I'm going to start bringing it up higher, seeing if that makes any difference with what we've got here. Or actually, let's bring it the other way. I'm just going to grab it and slide it maybe. There we go. Something like that. You can see that line is kind of vanished, and it's a bit smoother of an overlay now. And I can keep dialing that in just by using my scroll wheel, and it's looking pretty good. So I think we've got it really nice now. It doesn't look like there's an outline. It actually looks like it's blended in there, and it looks like the plant is over top of it. Everything looks really nice. And because we're using the actual footage, it's animated for free, right? So the footage is animated, so this alpha channel is going to be animated because we're just using that footage as the alpha channel. So that is exactly what we want. And we can even go back here and hit play to test that and see how that's working. That's looking great. You can see this plant is moving, and it's just staying right over top of our image, which is great. Yeah, and the only thing really left to do now is tweak the overall opacity. We've got a whole bunch of things contributing to how this mural is being put over, right? It came with its own alpha channel. We're creating a roto over here. We're creating a Luma matte. This is called a Luma matte, basically. I guess it's technically probably called a channel matte because we used one of the channels to create a matte. But we used the lights and darks of that channel, the luminance of that channel, to create a matte. So we typically call that a Luma matte. So yeah, then the last thing is that this merge node, you'll notice at the bottom it has a mix value, and a lot of nodes have that. The grade has it, the blur should have it, and what that is just an overall opacity of that effect. So the blur, if you were to turn this down, it would, if you turned it to 0.5, the blur would be affecting this at half the value, or mixing it in kind of at half the value. So the same thing applies in this merge node. If we turn this mix down all the way, you'll see that our mural is kind of gone. And as we bring it up, the mural kind of comes back. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to maybe something like, what, like 0.75 maybe, something like that. That looks really nice, right? Looks a little faded now. You can kind of see some of the wall colors through the paint as if everything's been fading, and I think that looks really good. And we can also check our blur, make sure we're happy with it, how it is. If you disable it, you can see it's extra sharp. Maybe let's set it to 2 and see what that looks like. Maybe we'll come back to 3, but yeah, I still feel like some of these little details are too sharp. So maybe like 0.6, 2.6. How about 2.7 or 2.8? That's close enough to 3, right? That looks good. We'll stick with that. So yeah, so there you go. One other thing to show you is that right now you can see that this bounding box, if you zoom out, this bounding box around the image is actually larger than our HD image, right? 1920 by 1080, but for some reason we're getting this image that's 2056 by 1085. We kind of want to clamp that down. Well, I'm sorry, it's not 2056, but well, yeah, I guess it is. But you can see down here we're going to -69. We kind of want to trim this off. We don't need this stuff, whatever that is. It's typically like rotos, or it could be stuff from the corner pin or something. But we're going to go ahead and trim that off. And the way to do that is kind of built into the merge nodes. If you select the merge node, you can see there's this option for bounding box, union. Union means A and B, it's going to combine them both, and wherever those bounds are, that's how big it's going to make the bounding box. But into our B line, we only have the footage, and we know the footage is the right size, right? Is it even listed in here? It is not, but we do know that this footage is 1920 by 1080. There it is. And that's kind of what we want this to be. So if we can set this bounding box to use the B input, it will trim it, right? So there we go. And let's do it to this one as well, just in case. And now for sure, this image coming out of here is exactly the size we want. There's nothing extra. So yeah, so let's go ahead and save that. I think we're at a good spot to save and move on. And in the next one, we'll add some more spray paint options. We'll even get into some other finishing details like adding noise and grain and some color correction stuff. So I'll see you in the next one.